Tap. A tone. A green check mark. One word, approved. It feels like the simplest promise in modern life. You can leave with the coffee, the shoes, the plane ticket, or the groceries. The store made a sale. Your phone says the payment is done. But that green check mark does not mean the merchant has the money. At that exact moment, no tiny $100 bill has raced from your bank account to the cash register. What moved first was a question, may this purchase go ahead? The answer came back in seconds. The money story is slower, stranger, and much more crowded. Behind one tap are different clocks, a permission clock, a records clock, and a payment clock. They move together just enough to feel instant, but they are not the same thing. And that is where the real question begins: if the terminal only received permission, who is still waiting to be paid? Start with the two people everyone can see, the cardholder and the merchant. You present a card. The merchant accepts it. That looks like a two-person exchange. But in a common card payment model, the merchant is connected to an acquiring side, a bank, processor, payment facilitator, or several companies working together. On the other side is the issuer, the institution that provided the card account and decides whether this purchase can be approved. Between those sides is the card network, carrying messages and maintaining the rules that let participants work together. So a simple tap can involve a cardholder, merchant, acquiring side, network, and issuer. Sometimes one company performs more than one role. Sometimes extra services sit around the edges, a gateway, fraud tool, terminal provider, wallet, or token service. That sounds complicated, but it gives us a better way to watch the transaction. We will not follow company logos. We will follow jobs. Who asks the question? Who says yes? Who keeps the records? Who moves the value? And when something goes wrong, who has to prove what happened? The first answer is surprising: the fastest part of the payment is not payment at all. There is another reason these roles are easy to confuse. At the counter, they can all be hidden inside one small rectangle. A merchant may see one terminal provider. A customer may see one familiar brand on a card. But the visible brand, the company that processes data, the institution that issued credit, and the business that deposits the merchant's money do not have to be the same company. That is not a trick. It is specialization. One participant may be good at lending. Another may be good at giving merchants terminals and reporting tools. Another may operate a message network used by many institutions. Another may handle fraud, tokenization, or customer support. The price of that specialization is that a payment has to coordinate them. The reward is that you can tap in a cafe you have never visited and get an answer almost immediately. But immediate does not mean finished. To see why, we have to follow the very first thing that leaves the terminal. When you tap, insert, or enter a card online, the merchant side sends a request into the system. It includes the purchase information and a payment credential. The request travels toward the issuer through the route available for that transaction. The issuer evaluates it. Is the account usable? Is credit or funds available under the relevant rules? Does the transaction trigger a security control? The exact checks differ, but the important point is simple: in this representative path, the issuer is answering a request. Then the answer returns. Approved. Or declined. That round trip can take seconds because it is primarily a message path. A request travels out. A decision travels back. The green check mark is therefore an answer, not a receipt for final settlement. It says the purchase may continue under the information available now. It does not mean every participant has completed its financial position. It does not mean the merchant has already received its contracted payout. That difference is invisible at the counter. But it matters the moment you ask a dangerous question: if the sale is approved, why can the money still change direction later? After authorization, the transaction still has work to do. First comes the permission clock, the quick authorization message and the answer you see. Then comes the records clock. Final transaction information is exchanged so the participating sides can post records, calculate obligations, and apply the terms that govern the purchase. This is often described as clearing. Then comes the payment clock, settlement between the issuing and acquiring sides, followed by the merchant payout under the merchant's own agreement. Those steps are connected, but they should never be drawn as one magical arrow. A merchant may receive funds according to its contract on a different schedule from the underlying settlement arrangements. A processor may add a service layer. Some transactions are handled differently depending on their route, card type, or whether the same institution sits on both sides. So when someone says, "the money moved," ask, which money, between which parties, and on which clock? That question becomes even more important when the merchant looks at a $100 sale and discovers the payout is not always $100. Think of an airline boarding pass. Being allowed through the gate is real. It matters. But it is not the same as arriving at the destination, collecting your luggage, and closing the books for the flight. Card authorization is like the gate decision. It is designed to be fast enough for the moment in front of the customer. The later stages are designed for a different job. They reconcile what actually happened. Was the final amount the same? Did the merchant submit the transaction? Were adjustments required? Which participant owes which other participant after a much larger batch of transactions is considered? This is why a careful documentary should resist a seductive but wrong picture, one coin shooting through 5 boxes. The system is more like messages becoming records, records becoming obligations, and obligations becoming payment. Once you see that sequence, the most confusing line on a merchant statement starts to make sense. Imagine a store sells $100 of goods. The customer sees a single price. The merchant may see a much more detailed statement. Card acceptance can involve a merchant service price. Within that price, there may be distinct categories, an interchange component associated with the issuing side in a common 4-party model, network charges, and acquiring, processing, gateway, fraud, equipment, reporting, or support charges. That does not mean every merchant pays the same percentage. It does not mean every card creates the same charge. Pricing can vary with card type, transaction channel, risk, merchant category, volume, contract, and country. But it does explain why the phrase, "the credit card company takes a cut," is too blurry to be useful. Which company? Which part of the system? Who contracted for the service? And who ultimately carries the economic cost? For a small business, the answer can feel immediate: card acceptance is a cost of making the sale. For a customer, the cost may be hidden in prices, a surcharge where permitted, fewer rewards, or a merchant's decision about which payments to accept. The exact outcome is not universal. That tension is why a tiny swipe can become a huge political argument. But before we reach that fight, the system has one more secret: it was designed not only to move forward, but also to unwind. The system also has to work when nobody agrees. A restaurant may say a meal was delivered. A cardholder may say it was not. A hotel may need to adjust a deposit. An online merchant may face a purchase made with stolen credentials. A customer may simply change their mind and ask the merchant for a refund. Those events sound similar when you are frustrated and looking at a bank statement. Operationally, they can be very different. The distinction decides which message is sent, what evidence is useful, which deadline matters, and where responsibility may land. So before we ask whether the fees are fair, we need to see the safety net those fees and rules are meant to support. The hidden network is not just a conveyor belt for successful purchases. It is also a court of records for failed ones. A decline is not a refund. A void is not a dispute. A dispute is not automatically a chargeback. And a chargeback is not the same as a final decision. If a merchant cancels early enough, the system may use a reversal or void path. If the merchant returns money after a completed sale, that is a refund. If a cardholder questions a transaction, a different process can begin. The issuer may investigate, the merchant may be asked for evidence, and network rules can govern how information and financial responsibility move back through the chain. That is why, just undo it is often impossible. The original transaction may have created records, obligations, and deadlines across several companies. The system needs a way to distinguish a cancellation from a merchant refund, an unauthorized use claim, a billing error, or a delivery dispute. The happy path looks like one clean line. The exception path looks like a branching tree. And every branch asks the same uncomfortable question: who has the evidence, and who holds the loss while the answer is uncertain? For the customer, that is why a payment can feel finished and unfinished at the same time. You may see a pending item, a completed item, a reversed authorization, a refund, or a temporary credit while an investigation continues. Those labels are not merely confusing bank app language. They describe different states in a process that is trying to preserve fairness after the original moment of trust is broken. For the merchant, the same process can mean gathering receipts, shipping records, customer communications, terminal data, or proof that a digital service was delivered. For the issuer, it can mean evaluating the account, the applicable consumer protections, and the information supplied through the network path. No single green check mark can settle all of that in advance. The check mark only opens the door. And even when technology seems to remove the card entirely, the door is still connected to the same hidden rooms. Now replace the plastic card with a phone. The tap looks more futuristic, but a wallet usually does not erase the system underneath it. Instead, it can replace the exposed card credential with a device-specific token and attach security data designed for that payment event or device. That can make a lost phone, stolen credential, or compromised merchant system a different kind of problem. The merchant may receive a token rather than the underlying card number. A token can be suspended or replaced in ways that do not necessarily require replacing the entire account. But beneath that extra layer, the familiar jobs remain. The merchant side still needs acceptance. The acquiring side still sends the request. The network still connects participants. The issuer still makes the approval decision in our representative path. The phone made the payment feel simpler because it hid one more layer. Which raises the bigger question: if the system is so useful, why are the rules behind it under constant pressure? The answer is not that wallets are fake or that cards are obsolete. The answer is that convenience has value, and every participant sees that value from a different position. The cardholder sees a faster checkout and, sometimes, a promise of protection or rewards. The merchant sees access to customers who expect to tap or click. The issuer sees a lending and risk relationship. The acquiring side sees a service relationship with the merchant. The network sees a shared system that has to remain trusted enough for all of them to use it. When a phone replaces a card number with a token, it can improve security around the credential. It does not make the question of costs disappear. It makes the cost structure easier to overlook because the experience has become even smoother. That is why the fight over a fraction of a tap is really a fight over the value created by the whole system. Every card payment balances competing promises. Merchants want inexpensive, reliable acceptance. Cardholders want convenience, protection, and sometimes rewards. Issuers want to manage risk and extend credit. Networks and acquiring services need common rules, resilient connections, fraud controls, and a way to be paid for operating the system. The conflict appears whenever someone asks whether acceptance costs are fair, transparent, or properly assigned. A small percentage of millions of payments can become a very large number. Change the rules for one participant, and the effects can reach rewards, merchant pricing, card availability, routing choices, fraud controls, and consumer protections. There is no honest one-line answer to who should pay. Different countries and payment types use different legal frameworks. Different merchants have different bargaining power. Different customers value cash, cards, credit, rewards, or privacy differently. But the debate becomes much clearer once you stop imagining one company charging one fee for one simple tap. You are looking at a negotiated system of messages, risk, services, and delayed obligations. And that brings us back to the green check mark. One side may say lower acceptance costs would help businesses and eventually customers. Another may say reducing one revenue stream changes rewards, credit availability, fraud investment, or the willingness to serve riskier customers. A third may say the problem is not the existence of fees, but the lack of visibility into who receives them and why. Each argument can contain a piece of the truth because each begins at a different point in the network. That is the trap of simple slogans. Merchants pay. Yes, but that does not describe every economic consequence. Consumers pay. Sometimes costs are passed through, but not in one universal way. Banks pay. They may bear losses and operating costs in some cases, while also receiving revenue in others. The network pays. A network can set rules and operate services, but it is not the only participant in the chain. The useful question is more precise: for this type of transaction, under this contract and these rules, who pays which cost, and what changes if the rule changes? Now the final meaning of approved becomes clearer. Return to the terminal. The customer has left. The cashier is serving the next person. The word approved has already disappeared from the screen. Yet that one word compressed an entire hidden system into a single human-friendly answer. It meant a message asked for permission. It meant an issuer answered under its current rules. It began a chain of records that could later determine obligations. It set up settlement between financial participants. And it began the merchant's own path toward a payout, less whatever services and contractual charges apply, and still subject to the exception processes that exist when the story changes. The tap is simple because the system behind it is not. So the next time a terminal says, approved, do not picture money instantly flying through a wire. Picture 3 layers. A message that asks permission. A ledger that determines obligations. A settlement process that turns obligations into payment. The green check mark is real. It is just not the ending. It is the first visible clue to the hidden system that makes modern commerce feel effortless. And it gives you a better question the next time you are offered a discount for cash, asked to pay a card surcharge, promised a new reward, or told a payment is still pending. Do not ask only, did the card work? Ask, which clock am I looking at? Because the answer may tell you whether you have permission, whether someone has recorded an obligation, or whether money has actually reached the person waiting for it. That is the hidden network behind every green check mark.